Morning, Hannah. Lovely to see you again.
And you, how are you doing?
Very well. Yes, looking forward to Eurovision tomorrow.
Oh,
I'm a big Eurovision fan.
are you? I did not expect you to say that. I was
Well, there
like,
you go. Yeah,
I don't even, I mean, yeah, it's on tomorrow, isn't it? It's in Liverpool, right?
it's, it's in Liverpool. Yes, the British guy Sam, who came runner-up last year, used to live in my village. He used to run the coffee shop in my village, so I knew Sam until he
Ah,
went off to become a superstar. So
Sam Ryder.
Sam Ryder, yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He is genuinely the nicest bloke you've ever met. So they said that
Okay.
about him last year. So yeah, I've always been a bit of a Eurovision fan. Though we had a big
Okay.
party last year because my grown-up children were all around. But I'll be on my own this year, which was a bit sad. But
Oh,
yeah, so
well,
yeah,
I'll try and remember and have a little cheers. I
you've got to look out
don't
for
think I've looked
Croatia.
at it.
They're all completely mad. It's real classic Eurovision, stupid costumes
Oh,
and silly songs, and but yeah, very happy, loving atmosphere, which is nice, isn't it? We need
okay.
a bit more love in the world, don't
We do indeed. Okay, well, I might tune into it now. Then he might have sold
we?
it to me. I've not watched it for a very long time. I was just used to get annoyed because it'd be like nil pois for
I
England,
know.
and I'd be like, oh, for God's sake.
Our
Um,
song was good.
yeah. Okay, so yeah, introducing David Hewitt, who is the owner of East Saxon Training, and David has been a partner of ours for a couple of years now. And I'd love to hear more about East Saxon and how the business first came about.
Thanks very much. Yeah, well, my background's in healthcare, so I was in the NHS for a number of years as a director of a large hospital in Essex where I live, and then also a private hospital. So very heavily regulated hospitals, lots of things we have to do to meet the requirements. So lots of training, lots of skills. And although I was in the management team, I quite enjoyed delivering some of the training myself. I find it was a good way to get to know people and get a sense of what was going on in the hospital. So I delivered some of the training myself, and also in the voluntary sector, I did a lot of training. I worked with youth organisation and some homeless charities, and a bit of work with the police and the ambulance service. So, and then various things happen in your life, and you think, time to do something different. So I've always had the urge to work for myself, and I always thought if I ever started to work for myself, it was going to be called East Saxon because I live in Essex, and that's where the word Essex comes from. East Saxon is
Yeah.
Essex, abbreviated to Essex over years, like Sussex is South Saxon. And
Yeah.
so I had the name and I decided, yes, I love training. Life's too short. So I set up that there's ideally a training business because I enjoy training, but also do a bit of consultancy work as well in the things I'm expert in, really using all those skills from healthcare to deliver training. So there's sort of two sides to it. There's what I call mandatory training, which, as I say, all businesses have to meet the legal requirements. So a lot of that comes under health and safety. So general health and safety awareness, COSH, display screen assessments, the first aid and fire safety and those kind of things. So I do a bit of consultancy on that. So I sometimes help businesses with their health and safety and doing fire risk assessments and things. So I
Yeah.
really enjoy that. I love being in the room and teaching the training. I'm not a mad fan of doing online and Zoom. I do it occasionally, but I'm a people person. I like being in the room with people, make training a bit of fun, and I try and tailor it to suit the individual customer. So some of my customers are big multinational companies, and we sort of focus on one thing. Whereas another organisation, I'll just do a little mandatory training morning day for them, where we do 6 or 7 things off the health and safety list, just to give them the overview, depending on the risk of the business.
Yeah.
And then the other side to my business, with having been a sort of senior manager for many years, I do a lot of some management training courses. So I do a little bit about how to do an appraisal, a bit of team building, how to deal with difficult staff, and build teams. There's not much. Sadly, I haven't had to do in my time. I've hired people, fired people, made people redundant, sacked people for doing silly things, employed people. So trying to share some of that learning and some of that team building skills that I've got. So I absolutely love it. Wish I'd done it years ago. I really enjoy, as I say, really enjoy working with people and getting out there. And it's been great working with the office management group. I think it's a brilliant platform you've got, and it's just to give that support network to the office managers. I think they're the real sort of unsung heroes of keeping the offices going. And I've just loved going in to work with some of your clients in the offices, doing those sorts of things. Really, I've gone in and run first aid courses in the offices. I've done some fire risk assessments, a little bit of health and safety support.
Yeah.
Um, been in some really interesting offices, met some lovely people, and it's been great.
Yeah. Fabulous. It's funny, isn't it? Because the unsung heroes thing comes up so much in the office manager role. And I think it's just the breadth of responsibilities, and health and safety as a standalone is huge. to get your head around, especially if you are in charge of that office. If you're not in a serviced office space, even if you are, there's health and safety responsibilities I think people forget about, but it's such a big piece of work, and so many people thoroughly underestimate how much needs to be managed and controlled and, like you say, trained in that, but let alone then all the other responsibilities that they have. You're coming to our awards, of course. You're a finalist for Service Provider of the Year.
Yeah,
So
I'm delighted to be nominated by some of your clients. So really, really pleased. Thank you. Yeah,
there's no better gratitude, right, I think, than having that nomination come through. So that's really nice. And you know, it's your first time, I think, right, at the awards ceremony. So you'll see and hopefully feel the atmosphere in the room of just how much this profession support each other and how we celebrate every single person in that profession and all the people like yourselves who support our network, but also the profession as a whole as well. So yeah, that should be a night to remember, hopefully. So tell us a little bit more about your role there and what sort of things does it involve? Obviously, you're the owner of the company. You're probably doing the jack of all in every aspect, much like me, running the business and then doing the work. You know, maybe go into a bit more detail, like you say, about some of the training, the fire risk assessments and the management training and things that you do.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, it's mainly myself, although I do work with other people as well. You know, as business grows and if there's areas outside of my expertise, bring other people in. So a real passion for delivering the training. So with my time as a volunteer for the ambulance service, I particularly enjoy doing first aid training. It gives me an opportunity to go and talk to people. And the best first aid you can do is kind of to stay healthy in the first place. I've got kind of a bit of a passion about talking to people about their own health and their own well-being. So, you know, when I run a first aid course, I always tell people, you know, the biggest killer in this country, sadly, is heart attacks. You know, what can you do to prevent a heart attack? You know, healthy eating, getting a good night's sleep, nutrition, and try and make it, you know, connect with some of those lifestyle things. And every single time, that's why I enjoy doing the training. People always open up. People have always got stories about that, and much more aware of it now. You go into offices now, and you do tend to see now a fruit bowl on the desk, not just a box of donuts. People are a bit more aware of what they need to do. So, yeah, I deliver that sort of training. And the consultancy side, with fire risk assessments, I think since the Grenfell Tower disaster, people are, you know, tragically much more aware of the risks of fire. It's fairly straightforward in offices, but it's easy to get things wrong. Doors haven't been properly looked after and maintained. Not maybe quite thinking through getting out somebody in a wheelchair. Quite often I'll go into buildings and they'll say, oh, we don't have anybody who's disabled in the building. So I'll say, well, what happens if a visitor turns up? You know, you can't not let them in. And you know, visitors don't necessarily tell you in advance that they're, you know, doesn't necessarily have to be a wheelchair user, does it? It could be somebody partially sighted or partially hearing. So just getting them to think about those kind of things, most people find very helpful. Yeah, so I delivered some of that myself, and then sometimes it's just a bit of support on the phone or an email. People have a document they need reviewed or updated, so I can give it some support. You can do on a Zoom call or, you know, electronically as well. Not everything has to be face to face.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. So how do you work with office managers now? You've mentioned obviously that you work with some of our clients and members and you enjoy it, but how exactly do you work with them? How do you support them?
So normally it starts with a telephone call and a conversation. Try and find out what their particular areas of concern are. Ideally, I do a sort of a desktop review with them first of all, where they send me some of their existing documentation. So I'm a little bit prepared about what's involved. So one of the clients recently, they were a bit concerned about Legionella, about display screen assessments, about fire and first aid. So sort of the usual sort of things you have in an office. So I had a look at their existing policies. They were a little bit out of date, and they, you know, they still had old, you know, previous people's names on and things like that. So just had a bit of a review, and then went in, met with them, did sort of like the fire risk assessment, gave them some real practical recommendations. I try not, you know, my background's in healthcare, where it's very, you know, if there's a fire in a hospital, you know, it's really serious. People can die. You know, offices are low at risk. You're just trying to get everybody safely out of the building. So I tailor it to that particular building. But some buildings you go into are much more complicated fire escape routes than others. So, you know, it's very different if you're on the 44th floor on a tower block in London than the second floor of a building. So some of them need a bit more thought and support than others. So I help them talk through those problems, try and make it practical, and then it normally ends up with some sort of training session with them and their and they normally identify a few fire marshals and a few first aiders, and we have a sort of a fun training day, and we can cover a bit of health and safety in that at the same time as well. And then I'm on the phone to support them. And what's quite nice is nearly all the work I get is word of mouth referrals. So they hopefully recommend me to somebody else, or they ask me to come back and look at something else. And or sometimes they move on to a different organisation and take me with them. So
yeah, there's nothing better than that, is there? And you've had some glowing feedback from some of our members on your training, and
I have,
some of them
delighted. Yeah. One of the things I'm most proud of. I've been going 3 years now, and I've got over 100 5-star reviews across Trustpilot and Google Business. So, one person gave me a 4-star review. It's funny, you always get fixated on the 4-star review, and they say I was excellent. I said, why didn't you give me 5 stars then? Over 100 5-star reviews. So I'm really delighted, and to be nominated for an award this year with your group, the Office Management Group, is amazing as well. And I was finalist with the Federation of Small Businesses in Essex as well this year. So I've had it.
Congratulations, that's really good.
Yeah, so we had a great award ceremony up in Newmarket as well with them. So it's a successful year so far, thankfully.
Good. Yeah, it's nice to take those moments and take stock, isn't it, when you're chugging away in your business, to sort of go, actually, do you know, I'm kicking butt and I'm doing pretty well at this, and it's evident because people are telling me so. So that's a really nice feeling.
Yeah, I thought the spring show was really good that you organised with the office managers coming around. There was a nice atmosphere, and it was nice there to see some of the office managers I'd worked with maybe a year ago, and then they come around and they recognise you and you have a chat, and there was lots of different businesses there giving them different support and help. And I think that's it can be quite lonely, I think, being the office manager, because you're sort of the only person doing that role, and you might be surrounded by partners and people in the business, and they're just sort of different to you. So to have a network to support them like that, I think is a great idea. Yeah,
it's really key, isn't it? Like, so many people say to me, I wish I knew about this sooner, and I wish I knew about this when I was first in office management and stuff. And I think, yeah, me too. I wish I had it. So what do you enjoy, sort of connecting quite nicely to the accolades and the acknowledgement that you're getting, but what do you enjoy the most about your job and working with office managers?
I enjoy the most when you feel you've really made a difference. So, like I say, that's why I quite like talking about pushing it a little bit beyond just the office environment. So I talk a bit about their own health, as I say, and the link to first aid. When we're talking about fire, I talk a bit about fire safety at home as well. My brother's a firefighter.
Okay.
200 people die in a fire in their own home every year, and most people forget that 70 of those people have got a working smoke alarm, and they still died in a fire in their own home. So it's although we accept that you have to have fire training at work, we don't think about having a plan for your own home about what you do if your smoke alarm went off in the middle of the night. Would you be able to get out of your own home in 40 seconds? Would you know where the key was? And we don't tend to think about that, do we? We like to put it at the back of our mind. So I quite like it when I have a conversation with somebody and then they come to you after and say, I'm going to go home tonight and I'm going to talk to my family about that, and we're going to have a fire plan for our household. Or you really inspired me to try and eat a bit healthier, or you've redoubled my efforts to go for a walk every lunchtime because it's good for my mental health. And it's really nice when you feel you've connected with somebody and they're going to go away and do something. I try and follow that up and send them an email and say, how's it going? Because it's nice to get a bit of encouragement, because none of us are perfect. I run every day the first week in January and didn't do anything the second week in January like everybody else. So it's sticking with these things isn't easy, is it?
Yeah, habits, they're hard to bed down, aren't they? Really, it takes 7 weeks, I understand from science, for us humans to bed down a habit. So
definitely, yeah, the longer you stick with it. I don't know if you've come across the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. That's a really powerful book if you're trying to embed healthy habits. He's widely cited now. It's kind of a good little he has a little structure for helping you get habits, and something that I've been doing for the last couple of years myself, and it does seem to make a difference, actually.
Yeah, it does. And finally, can you just share maybe one top tip or a few top tips in the areas that you're an expert on, please, David, with our watchers?
I think don't overcomplicate it. Sometimes I go into organisations and they're driven by the computer, so they've been sent some health and safety risk assessments or some policies and things, and their whole time is sort of drawn into filling in the boxes on the computer and filling in the information on the computer. And that isn't really what health and safety is about. It's about looking around the office. Is the office safe? Are people around it in a safe environment? And that's not complicated, and it doesn't have to be a really complicated Excel spreadsheet to track all this. It can be quite simple. So I think making sure you understand the basics of health and safety and what you're trying to achieve and focus on that The documentation is important, as you know. It's a powerful bit of legislation. If you get it wrong, it's unlimited fines and up to 2 years in prison. But at the basic part of it is just good common sense. Have you reduced the risk to as low as reasonably practical? And so say, don't be driven by the forms, but be a practical walk round sort of health and safety person. Keep it simple.
Yeah, absolutely. Really agree there. And I think a lot of people overcomplicate it because you say health and safety and it's got that fear connected to it as well. So it sounds like you help people abolish the fear quite nicely, which is great to see. So thank you so much for being my guest this month on 15 Minutes with David. It's really nice to catch up with you.
Yeah, absolute pleasure. I look forward to seeing you in the wards. Not long now, it's a couple of weeks.
Yes, I
No,
know.
a bit longer, about a month, isn't it? About a month to
Yeah,
go.
got to get planning.
Yeah. Always a pleasure, Hannah. Thank you.
Thank you.